W.O.W is the oldest shop in Chinatown, 91 years old this year. It's been in my family for 5 generations, so started with my great-great-grandfather who came to America as a merchant.
He opened it in the 1890s, and it was originally across the street where it was more of a general store. I think they also had like medicine. You could go there for like postal service. But then he moved it across the street to a bigger space in the 1920s, which is where we are today.
Back in the day when mother-in-law took over in mid-60s when her dad passed on. So she had a crisis at that time.
She wanted to focus on one object, and she found that porcelain was her calling, and that's how it's been ever since.
And for the past 50 years, my father-in-law and mother-in-law carried this business along and passed it on to us. This picture of all of us gathering here and having meals and going through our routines, opening the store 7 days a week, was a picture that all of us have in our minds when we venture beyond the boundaries of Chinatown and the store.
Leaving Chinatown for college and then leaving to go work and live abroad for 3 years, that courage that I had to leave home was rooted in my strong base here in Chinatown and with my family.
She could rely on that memory in her ventures beyond Chinatown. And it brings comfort, safety, and security, and it's predictable.
Me, myself, and like my sister and my other cousins all have full-time jobs, and this was when I think May was still abroad or had just come back. So none of our paths were to take on the store.
Mother-in-law and father-in-law are getting up in age. They're 93 and 87. It got to a point where they were getting too old to carry it on.
When I found out that my grandma and my parents were considering selling the building and giving up the business, it was really upsetting to me, and I didn't want to be so reactive. I wanted to understand where the decision was coming from.
My grandma, I think, didn't want us to be trapped by the store. She saw it as a negative thing at the time.
My family, I think they didn't really know what to do in the time that we were going through the motions of putting our building on the market, talking to a bidder, and almost signing. They all were kind of frozen. They were like, okay, it's happening. We can't do anything about it.
She was in a fork in the road. She was accepted to grad school. We were on the cusp of selling the business, so there's a lot of conflict and struggle with that.
I was the only one jumping up and down, waving my arms no, this doesn't have to be something that just happens. And in the end, I didn't want it to be a decision that we regretted. And because we all live in the community, it's it would be so painful to walk past the storefront and see something else here instead of our space. At the same time, I had met a woman named Diane Wong. She walked into the shop in December of last year and was starting her dissertation research on the gentrification of Chinatowns in the US. And so after she met me and had my interview, she invited me on other interviews with her. She said, I know that you're reintegrating back into Chinatown, and maybe it'll be a good idea for you to come along with me. So that moment of meeting her and then spending 3 months interviewing different community stakeholders was a turning point for me, because I was able to listen to the stories of the people that make up my community, listen to the issues and the concerns.
Although, small businesses start in small worlds like Chinatown, neighborhoods like this. How do you sustain it is that, you continue for as long as you cannot, and if there's an opportunity for those to return like May, you offer them that option, and if that's not their wish, you move on. That's basically the way of the world. Because for mom and pops to start a business in New York City, a gentrified New York City is very difficult. The expenses are very high, you don't have much money, and it's great risk.
One point that comes to the forefront of my mind is just all these hipster locations that are opening up in Chinatown. While they're very trendy, they don't help sustain the Chinatown community.
The visible changes are making people really nervous, and I think it's tough. I think that older generations are stubborn in their ways and stuck in their ways. They don't see the value in changing the way that they're doing things because it's been working for so many years. And for me, I mean, it is challenging to work in a multi-generational space and to say, no, I think that we should change this, or I think we should use social media, or I think we should get a website, and to sell it to my 86-year-old grandma who is like, I don't know what that means. Like,
there seems to be a big disparity in the generations. I almost notice that I feel like there's like a missing generation in between.
And I realize now that the work that I did in China and Thailand and Laos, I mean, working across cultures is not so much different than working across generations. There's still that same base, patience, open-mindedness, and just a willingness and curiosity to learn from the other person. Just because my grandma's my grandma doesn't mean that I know everything about her. I need to remind her that, hey, do you remember when you were 26 years old and had a lot of energy and were excited to learn and explore? And to also remind her of how she started taking over the business. She reached a similar turning point with her family and the business in 1964, and none of her family members wanted to keep the space, but she was the one who said, no, I want to keep it, I'll take it over. And so we have that relating point, and to figure out the commonalities between our experience is where the generation gap closes, right? But it's just a matter of reminding her and telling her, like, no, I'm here for you, I'm here every day, don't worry, you know, things like that. So the W.O.W Project started in May. We had come up with this idea of holding a really informal panel discussion showcasing second-gen, third-gen Chinese American business owners and asking them about how they see themselves playing a role in this cycle of a changing neighborhood, of gentrification, because they hold a lot of economic development power in their hands as businesses.
We want to make sure that the future of Chinatown is in our hands versus people from the outside coming in, ensuring that the community still has a voice and it doesn't get lost.
And we're trying to just show that there's really innovative things coming out of Chinatown, and that our community is made up of really amazing, talented people.
I think a way to be part of the community is coming to the panels and joining the discussion, sharing their point of views, being an active part of the community, not just a figure who is here because the rent might be cheaper.
The initiative really is bringing people into a supportive environment to encourage them to speak their heart and to tap into their intuition.
I don't want for us, Wing On Wo and the W.O.W Project, to forget that we are a shop in Chinatown, but we also exist in a larger space too, and what that means against a larger context, because our work is more powerful in that way if we're able to connect with other people.
Do not put yourself to sleep to cope with the world, because you have feelings, you have passion, you have interests, you have hobbies, you have an opinion about what's going on. Maybe it's the changes that I was talking about that you're having problems coping with. How do we deal with them in a proactive way? So this is what it's about. You know, inviting others like ourselves. We're not more than or less than. We're not leaders, we're collaborators and cooperators. And it's about team building. It's about incorporating everyone into the truth about living together, not separate.
Throughout the process, yeah. Do you want to come out? Paul.
Mr. Haas gonna pick up the stuff for it going
What time?
soon.
Okay.
Just gonna hang that over there.
Do you want to go do it?
When are you going to be through?
Almost. You're up next, you know.
That's what you think.